The New York Giants fired Joe Judge. The Giants fired Joe Judge. Now, those are words that I never thought that I would say. Never mind that this dude was walking around, acting and talking like he was Bill Parcells, when in reality, he's not even Ray Hanley. Yet for some reason, Giants ownership could not praise this guy enough or love him any more than they did. And for reasons only known to them, because even on the outside looking in, the rest of the world could see this guy for what he really was. Totally unprepared. Totally unprepared, talking out his ass, in over his head, and a joke, and an embarrassment. Literally everything this guy touched turned to crap. Yet, as other more successful and more qualified coaches were getting broken off left and right, Joe Judge was safe. I mean, safe. Hell, pretty much untouchable, unfireable. Why else do you think that after another embarrassing season, when the rest of the world mocked him and the organization, the ownership tells him, hey, listen, Joe, you're good, you're fine, we're going to bring you back. However, there has to be some changes made. And apparently Judge waits for them to finish and then reportedly says something along the lines of, you done? You done? Good. Now here's what I need. Here's what you're going to do for me. You're going to involve me in hiring the next GM. You're going to involve me in hiring my next boss. Except he's not going to be my boss. I'm going to be his boss. You know, Judge is like a fourth grader. You're not the boss of me. I'm the boss of you. All of you. Like I said yesterday, I don't know if this guy is the most out of touch dude ever, or if he just has got the biggest brass set ever, or both. But every single time this guy opened up his mouth, something more asinine came flying out than the time before. It was incredible because no matter how much he sucked, ownership had his back. And the more he sucked, the louder he got. Second-year coaches who suck generally are seen and not heard. Generally, they are smart enough to answer questions at press conferences and be nice to everybody they meet and spend most of their day in the dark room trying to get better. Not this tool. He was more than happy to be a jackass in press conferences, lecture reporters, and go on 11-minute profanity-laced rants where he bashed other teams, told lies, unbelievable stories about former players calling him and current players begging him and fans having access to his team email address. And yet, despite all of that, this guy was still closer to getting an extension than he was to being fired. Again. I mean, this guy was so arrogant that he was trying to insert himself into the GM search when anybody else in his position would just be happy that they were only searching for a GM and not a head coach. But now the team is searching for both. John Mara released a statement yesterday that read in part, and I quote, "We met with Joe yesterday afternoon to discuss the state of the team. I met again with Joe this afternoon, and it was during that conversation I informed Joe of our decision. We appreciate Joe's efforts on behalf of the organization," end of quote. You appreciate his efforts. What efforts do you appreciate? The effort where he installed that basketball hoop so his guys can play basketball in the winter to learn how to catch a football? Or whatever the hell he was talking about? Or that time that he had the DBs tape tennis balls to their hands so they could cut down on penalties? Or that time he took the names off the players' practice jerseys in his first camp because, quote, "It's important to know who the players are on the field across from you by their body type and how they move," end of quote. Like, this dude is the gimmickiest head coach in the history of football. Now, if you're Bill Belichick and you pull that crap, you're a genius because you're Bill Belichick. But this goofball was not Bill Belichick. He wasn't even Steven Belichick. He's Joe bleeping Judge. And frankly, he sucked. You ever notice Belichick is a genius, but never ever says anything at all publicly? Never, nothing. Like Joe Judge didn't come off like a smart guy. He came off like a dumb guy whose idea of being a smart guy was that he wanted everybody to know that he was the smartest guy in the room, except he wasn't.
Gimmicky little bitch.
And the absolute best part, and the proof of just how ignorant this guy is the fact that Joe Judge literally coached and talked himself out of his job. Literally, the job was his. He had the best job security in the NFL. He kept on getting blown out, and ownership kept backing him. He was stacking blowout losses. They weren't just losing, they were getting hammered. They weren't even competitive, and yet ownership still backed him. Ownership still loved him. I mean, this guy had so much support, he had the audacity to try to play a role in hiring his boss. Yet somehow, some way, when it was pretty clear they were going to bring him back, over the last week and a half, this dude somehow talked and coached his way into getting fired. Literally. There was that 11-minute rant, expletives, and lies. And if you want proof that Giants ownership still did not want to fire this guy, nobody went down and ripped his badge and his headset after he did that a second time. They let him coach the rest of the game. Then they met with him on Monday, then again on Tuesday. The fact that they didn't fire him on Sunday or Monday tells you he really did talk his way out of that job because he simply could not shut his mouth. Because the Giants did not want to fire this guy. They really didn't. They were going to bring him back. They had somehow convinced themselves that this tool was the next Bill Belichick or the next Nick Saban. They didn't want to fire him, and they didn't want to continue their run of coaches who get canned after 2 years or less. They were fighting like crazy to keep Joe Judge, but he would not let them. He pissed it all away over the last week and a half by coming off as totally unstable, off the rails, and just frankly miserable to be around. I mean, that's part of this too, right? No, I'm not there. I'm not there. But is there anybody or anything about this guy that seemed like he had an ability to motivate or inspire? Anything that he said or did that made anybody want to work for him or run through a wall for him or be around him? I mean, I guess maybe, but every time I saw this guy talking, only one word came to mind: insufferable. Like the most annoying guy to be around. Yet, despite this, he was going to get another year. And honestly, probably get an extension at some point. All he had to do was stop running his mouth. But he couldn't. He couldn't help himself, and he got himself fired. Now, just because the Giants finally came to their senses does not mean they deserve any credit or any praise. Better late than never, I guess. But really, it should have never taken this long. And just firing this guy is not going to get rid of that stink anytime soon. You know, you can't just open up all the windows, open up all the doors, and then hit it with some Lysol. Man, you're not going to get that out of that room anytime soon. The Giants are now going to be looking for their fourth full-time head coach in the last 5 years. The New York Giants. You know who the worst team in the NFL has been over the last 5 years? The New York Giants. You know who's looking up at the Jaguars and the Texans over the last 5 years? The New York Giants. And each of their last three head coaches have lasted 2 years or less. Like, don't get me wrong, Joe Judge was a problem. But the other problem is that somebody thought that Joe Judge was a good idea. Just like somebody thought that Pat Shurmur was a good idea. Just like somebody thought that Ben McAdoo was a good idea. Just like somebody thought that Garrett Ritt was a good idea. Just kidding, old man. Had to slide you in there. This is the team of Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin. And that's been led by a series of clowns. And yes, you can say that I hated this from the beginning. Because I did. And I was right. You know, all you Giants fans who pushed back so hard on me like I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I mean, it really was idiotic from the beginning. He was coming after being the Patriots wide receivers coach, a group that Tom Brady was always pissed about. And don't think for a second that I've forgotten about all you people who said, yeah, but he's also the special teams coordinator. And John Harbaugh was a special teams coordinator before he became the Ravens head coach. Don't think for a second that I forgot all of you who came at me for that. If that was you, and if you were saying that Joe Judge was going to get John Harbaugh results, John and I will take your apologies right now. That was a horrible take then, and you look even dumber now. John Harbaugh is a Super Bowl winning head coach who cranks out double-digit win seasons. Joe Judge cranks out double-digit loss seasons and excuses like that's his job. If Joe Judge ever dreamed that he was John Harbaugh, he got to wake up and apologize to him and to me. Joe Judge was not Coach Harbaugh. He was Coach Hardo, the ultimate try-hard guy, desperate to tell everybody how smart and how tough he was when all anybody ever wanted from him was silence. Like, I was right. I accept your apology. You're welcome. And if I, right, a radio/TV knucklehead, could tell that this is how this was going to be from 3,000 miles away, maybe I should be involved in the next coaching search. You couldn't do any worse. You already have. Comparing John Harbaugh to Joe Judge is as ridiculous as, I don't know, comparing Patrick Mahomes to Chad Henne. Yeah, they're both Chiefs quarterbacks.
Kind of ridiculous.
Right? Maybe Joe Judge thought that Mike Glennon was behind center when he called that quarterback sneak. This is for you, clones. Maybe he thought it was Glennon behind center when he called that quarterback sneak. His neck alone would have gotten that 9 yards for the first down. You like that, clones? In fact, when Mike Glennon throws a Hail Mary, they just run a quarterback sneak. You see what I did right there for you, clones? Actually, I take that back. Unless Glennon can hold the ball with his ears, this is impossible. That was a stretch. Hey-o! Clones, sometimes I do give you what you want. You can see Glennon with the ball under center on his own 1 yard line. Washington playing back, prevent defense, too deep. Safeties back on their own goal line as Glennon tries to sneak it from his. DBs are taught to knock the ball down. Go up and knock the ball down. Safety gets pancaked by Glennon's trachea as he stretches from his own 1 yard line. And the ball is up for grabs on the opponent's 1 yard line. You like that? You like that? You see, clones? Every once in a while, I will give you what you want.